Hi everyone, I'm Melanie. I'm Italian. I grew up in Rome. Until about 4 years ago, I didn't speak English totally. I had studied, of course, it at school like everyone else, but I had never really used it. I couldn't hold a conversation really. So when I decided to start studying high ticket sales with a mentor I found online, I immediately felt out of peace. So I was the only one who was a native American or English speaker, and every time we did role plays, I felt so uncomfortable. So I remember I couldn't even pronounce certain words properly, and I remember thinking, what am I doing here? So that feeling of being the outsider stayed with me for a while. I thought that the others had a huge advantage just because of their language skills. And I remember at first I felt insecure. I couldn't bear to listen to my recordings. I overthought to every word, and I was afraid that customer would judge me or not take me seriously. But then, little by little, things changed. So I realized that I didn't need to sound like a native speaker to be successful, and what really mattered was discipline, consistency, daily commitment, of course, and above all, focusing on the client rather than myself during the sales call. And the incredible thing is that even though I started from the scratch, I managed to generate more than $300,000 in the last 12 months working as a high ticket closer. Not because I became perfect or because my Italian accent disappeared, you can hear it, but because I learned to make the most of what I had and to improve day by day and to no longer allow this to hold me back and to stop me. So in this video, I want to tell you exactly how I did it, the doubts, mistakes, lessons, and practical things that allowed me to go from not speaking English fluently to building a career in sales that has given me freedom, stability, and of course personal growth. And I would never have had in a normal office job actually. So at first every call was a challenge, not only because I was new to the world of sales, but also because I was still perfecting my English. And you should know that until 4 years ago, I only knew the basics of English that I had learned at school. But then I started watching movies and TV series in English really a lot of times, and over that time my English improved significantly. Later on, I moved to Dubai for work, and of course my English improved, but even so my English was still not perfect. So very often, instead of focusing on the person in front of me, I was still translating sentences from Italian in my head, and I still couldn't think completely in English. And I remember I would prepare myself 1,000 times before the call, and I would repeat the whole sentences in my head thinking I have to say it right, I have to sound confident. But when the conversation started, I was more focused on my pronunciation than on the client, and so I couldn't really be present in the sales call. And this was my first big challenge, trying to sound perfect instead of being natural. And the paradox is that the more I tried to sound perfect, the less authentic I came across. And it almost seemed like I was reading from a script all the time, instead of course, talking to a person. And I remember a phrase that struck me deeply, because once after a call, a client told me that she really liked my approach because she felt understood. And at that moment, I realized that no one was there to judge my English. It didn't matter if I made a few mistakes, okay, it's normal. And what mattered was how I made the person feel on the other side. And that's when I started to change my perspective, and I understood that the problem wasn't the language, the problem was the story I was telling myself about the language. And at a certain point, I realized that I couldn't continue to let myself be blocked by the fear of not speaking well. So the only way was to work on it with discipline. And I started role playing every day, even when I didn't feel like it. And sometimes I felt ridiculous because while others spoke fluently, I was still searching the right words. But I didn't stop. I kept going, call after call, exercises after exercises, and I remember setting myself a rule. So at least an hour a day recording myself speaking English. Then I would listen back and figure out where I could improve. And at first it hurt to hear my own voice, but it was one of the most powerful tools for growth. In addition to this, I repeated the script in front of the mirror over and over again. So not to memorize it, but to get used to something more natural when I spoke. And every day I added a little bit, and day after day I felt less stuck. And there was no magical moment actually when everything changed. It was of course a process, but thanks to that discipline, those hours spent practicing when no one of course was watching, I managed to turn what was my biggest insecurity into one of actually my strengths. So the truth is, my English didn't become perfect, and of course it never will, but it became strong enough to allow me to do what I wanted. So communicate, understand, and of course guide people in the sales calls. And that's what allowed me to move forward and achieve results that seems unthinkable at first. And after a month of exercises, roleplay, and recordings, I began to realize that some of the things I saw as limitations were actually opportunities. Because for example, talking to other closers and companies, sales managers, I discovered that in many cases knowing multiple languages is a huge advantage in this space, because companies that operate internationally often look for people who can of course navigate in different contexts and have the ability to talk to customers from different countries. So being bilingual, or at least knowing how to manage multiple languages, gives more possibilities, as many companies right now are looking for bilingual high-ticket closers. And I didn't realize this at first. I thought my Italian was a problem, when in fact it was an asset. When I look back and think about how I came to earn more than $300,000 in the last 12 months, I realized that it wasn't a stroke of luck, but it was the result of habits and lessons I learned one step at a time. And the first lesson was of course discipline. So it all started with English. At first I had no choice. If I wanted to improve, I had to practice every day. Roleplay, recordings, reading aloud. It wasn't always easy, and sometimes it was boring, but that consistency created a habit that I then carried over into sales. So every day I practice with the language, and every day I also practice closing deals. And this discipline taught me that results don't come from one spectacular gesture, but from small steps repeated over the time. The second lesson was resilience. Not all the calls went well. There were days when I stumbled over my words, others when the customer wasn't interested, and I received constant objections and rejections. And at first they got me down, but then I realized I couldn't give up. Every no was just a part of the journey. Without resilience, I would have stopped right away. The third lesson was confidence. I didn't find confidence one day by chance. I built it piece by piece. So every time I took a small step forward, even if it was just being able to explain myself better or close a call that seems lost at first, that confidence grew. So it wasn't confidence in my language, but confidence in my ability to improve. The fourth lesson was focus. I learned that the more I tried to appear perfect, the more energy I lost. When I stopped focusing on myself and started focusing on the customer, everything became so easy. So focus allowed me to lighten up, to really understand people and guide them calmly. The fifth lesson was authenticity, but not in an abstract sense. It means that I no longer try to be someone else. I accepted my voice, my way of speaking, my style, and paradoxically, this made me more credible and professional. Finally, the sixth lesson was my growth mindset. So when you start from scratch, you realize that you can learn something new every day. This taught me that there is no such thing as a finish line. There is always room for improvement, and the same goes for sales. Every call teaches you something, every customer teaches you something. And adding all of these things up, I went from being a girl who couldn't say two sentences in English to generating more than $300,000 in sales in the last 12 months. And today, I help other women do the same. If you have made it to the end of this video, you probably recognize yourself at least in part of my story. Maybe you also think you're not ready enough, that you don't have the right skills, or that the language could be an obstacle. The truth is that no one starts out perfect. I wasn't, but I started anyway. I made mistakes, I felt out of place, I spent hours practicing when no one was watching, but it was the journey that, changed completely my life. And if I did it, even though a few years ago I didn't speak English and worked on a 9-to-5 job that gave me neither freedom or satisfaction, then you can do it too. You don't have to be perfect to get started. All you need is the decision to stop procrastinating. So if you felt like it's your time, message me directly on Instagram or book a call with me by clicking the link below in the description. Thank you for watching this video and see you in the next one.